You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, July 29th show. I provide the news on everything money, fresh information on market trends and conditions in our local economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. You can talk with the guests that I have in the show if you call 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150. or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio right now, I have Ryan Lundquist with Lundquist Company. We're going to be having a discussion on appraisals. Right, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me back on studio. Well, you're on the phone because I know that you're all the way in the Sacramento area, but I appreciate you joining me.
Hey, no sweat. Really glad to be here and looking forward to conversation.
And a little bit about Ryan. He's a certified residential appraiser in the Sacramento area. His clients include homeowners, real estate agents, governmental agencies, attorneys, and lenders. Ryan runs the Sacramento Appraisal Blog, which is a top-ranking appraisal blog in the United States. Ryan has been seen multiple times on CBS, quoted in the local and national publications. He is the chair of the Housing Opportunity Committee with the Sacramento Association of Realtors, and he is a board member of the Real Estate Appraiser Association of Sacramento. Ryan also won the Affiliate of the Year award in 2014 for the Sacramento Association of Realtors. And I went all the way out to Sacramento to get a guest for the studio when in the appraisal space from reading Ryan's blog. So if you're listening, I encourage you to take a look at that because provides some really great content and information. So a little bit about the appraisal market. I mean, it's the housing market's crazy, which the appraisal market's crazy. It doesn't matter if you're buying in your market or our market here in the Seattle. But what are the dangers of overpricing from your perspective as an appraiser?
No, sure thing. And I think overpricing is something that we see a lot of in a market with sensational headlines. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like every time buyers and sellers open up a magazine or newspaper or read something online, whether they're local publications or national, talking about the local market, it's all sensational and it's all about how hot the market is. And so I think that's where overpricing comes from in a lot of regards, but then the dangers are you put the property on the market and it just sits and nothing happens. And, there's this expectation that it's going to sell, but then it doesn't. And then, sellers sometimes struggle to negotiate the price down because they feel like, no, my house is really worth this amount. And so it can sometimes create a lot of tension when it comes to negotiating and really getting the price to a reasonable level where it should be in the first place.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to work with a expert real estate, which I've had one in here before your conversation, Ryan, and really find out exactly what that price is and to price it correct, and that's how you're going to maximize your dollar. So how is it, and this is a buyer would ask, in appraisal, if the appraisal value comes in low, how could that happen when the market is so hot? There were multiple offers on that property. Everybody was bidding over asking price. So how come the appraisal came in low?
Well, it's a good question. And the truth is that sometimes properties are getting bid up to, I think what we would say is no man's land or no person's land, if we want to say it like that. And, it's really a place that doesn't represent the market. It represents this bidding war. And, and so sometimes properties get up that high. I know the Chicago Tribune just ran a story about this very phenomenon. And really it was a piece that it sounded like it kind of butchered appraisers at the end of the day. But at the same time, the piece went on to show that there was this bidding war. And so in some senses, I think sellers need to control with their agents, which offers they accept, unless that buyer has cash to pay the difference between a reasonable value, the appraisal, and the contract price, then the appraisal might really come in low, but it's lower than the contract price, but then again, it's where it probably should be. And so I think we just have to take a realistic mindset over that. And then at the same time, if the market, the sales, and the pendings are all at a high level, and there's 10 offers at that level too, and then the appraisal comes in lower, then I think sometimes we do wonder and think, well, come on. I mean, it sounds like the market was speaking. There is the data there to support a higher value, and that's unfortunate if the appraisal really did come in too low.
Yeah, knock on wood, I'm not having, too many challenges with low appraisals at all. But if that comes up, really, it's back to, as an appraiser, you're licensed, and your job is to support the value that's there on the contract. And to do that, when it comes to the lending side, because you have to meet the requirements of when the lender's going to review that appraisal, you've got to have your comps, and compensating factor can be what's happening in those multiple offers. But ultimately, you've got to find comparable homes that warrant that price that they're paying. So I want to ask you something, Ryan, as well, with a low down payment buyer. So if there's multiple offers on that property, and let's say that there's been 10 offers, and you've got this buyer that was accepted, had a low down payment, and they paid quite a bit higher amount than what the highest offer was. And you might be able to come close to supporting that value, but you're a little off. Is there anything that's coming? Are you looking at the fact that buyer did a low down payment? Does that have any reflect in how you're going to or not support that value?
So it really doesn't. It doesn't make a difference in the value, because there might be a family member, or there might be a personal relationship between the buyer and seller, but their contract price either reflects the market or it doesn't. And so it doesn't really matter where the buyer's coming from or what type of financing is used. But I will say that sometimes buyers that put very little money down, they're offering at a price that they really want to secure that contract. And in an aggressive market, we see these types of buyers at times that they'll offer whatever the list price is, even if the list price is not reasonable, or the buyer will say, I'm tired of getting beat out. It's a competitive market, and I'm going to offer $20,000 more because I can qualify for that loan. And so the appraiser has to come in and then just tell the story of value and show market value. Here's, if you lined up 100 buyers, how much would most of them pay for the property? What's the most probable price this property should bring in an open and competitive market? And really not the highest price.
Yeah.
It's not that one buyer who's willing to pay more than anyone else, because that's not the market. That's one buyer. And unfortunately, I think when there's little skin in the game at times, that can influence where the contract ends up. And and it's too bad, because then if the buyer doesn't have funds to come and pay for the difference, it could create some tension in negotiation, and it's not easy. It's not easy for those buyers, but the truth is that that's not the appraiser's fault.
Sure.
The appraiser's not there to enable that deal to get done. It's the appraiser's there to show what market value is and help the lender manage risk, whether they should do the loan or not. It's not the appraiser's fault that someone offered too much.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you're helping the lender as well as the buyer to make sure that they're not paying, over asking price. So it's, kind of the protection on both sides there. So, Ryan, what is your opinion of Zillow or online sites representing value, and, what that really means in comparison? How far off do you see these online sites to the actual value of the home?
So it really depends. Sometimes in tract neighborhoods are a little bit better than in rural areas, but other times I'll appraise something, and then even in the tract neighborhood, Zillow's off by 10%, or I've seen Zillow off, by 40 to 50% or more, for fourplexes and duplexes. And so it's really, really hit and miss. But the thing I find interesting about Zillow, though, is that they come out with all these articles about how precise they are in value. And so they had something recently about if you painted your bathroom blue, a certain shade of blue, you can get $5,400 more in value.
What? Where do they come up with that? Is it kind of like an emotional thing for the appraiser that it just makes them feel better, so they're giving you their $5,000 on value?
So, I think we hear this headline, and then consumers go, wow, that is so neat. But then every single human appraiser on the ground and everyone in real estate's going, give me a break.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is so not true. Maybe you analyzed a bunch of pictures, and these remodeled homes happen to have a trendy color with light blue or turquoise, and then so we can falsely attribute, $30 in bathroom paint with $5,400 in value. And so
Wow.
I think that in some senses we have to be really careful what online sites are telling us. And that's not to say that, trust the humans more than the machines.
Sure.
I'm just saying that I think sometimes we're having these articles that are being sold as definitive truth, but we really have to step back and just think critically about the information we're presented.
Yeah. Well, we know we have to watch everything on, line. I mean, it's, there's information that's going to be accurate, information that's not. There's going to be opinions, and opinions are going to vary. And so it's just a wealth of information, and take it for what it is. So can you explain a little bit more briefly about how you come up with the value? What determines the value?
Sure. So first,
I know that's a whole show in itself, but go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I mean, the market determines the values, first of all, generally. And so value is going to be seen in the sales and comparable sales, ones that are similar enough to where we would say if a buyer wasn't buying this subject property, the buyer would purchase these other ones. And so it's almost like the appraiser takes an apples to apples approach. And if the subject property was an apple, you're looking for other apples and saying, what have they sold for, and what are they getting into contract for right now? Okay, and so we really have to give strong weight to pending sales. And sometimes the pendings will help us show that the market's increasing because they're all getting into contract at higher levels. And sometimes when the market softens, then you start to see properties no longer selling at the same level. And then, okay, look, the market's softening, or if it's declining in value, then we have to give more weight to those pendings too. And so, that's it in a nutshell. I guess, we could talk through all the aspects of the appraisal report, but let's not bore everyone.
Especially without any visual. What is that without visual?
Exactly.
So I don't know, in the Sacramento market versus here in our Seattle market, are you guys short on appraisers? Is there a lack of appraisers to accommodate for what's happening in the market?
You know what? We have enough in Sacramento. I talked to the state recently, and then their sense was in different markets in California, there are definitely enough appraisers. In the rural markets, that's where the struggle is. But my understanding in your market, that there is a legitimate shortage in Oregon and Washington. I actually have a friend who moved up from the Bay Area, and he moved to Vancouver because there is a need for more appraisers.
Yeah, and
fees are about
go ahead.
Are about twice as much
Yes.
there as they are here.
Well,
So
and
I think that helped him.
what we've and it's interesting with all of the regulations on cost and associated with getting a loan. I mean, there's behind the scenes everything that's happened after the financial crisis. But it's interesting with the appraisals, what we actually can do, and I educate my clients on this, is we can do a rush appraisal, pay a rush fee, but you can actually go out there and put that price out there. And I've kind of found that magic spot in what the price the cost that I'll put out there to the appraisers to get the appraiser to pick it up relatively quickly. So you can kind of play with that and go, okay, you want to spend an extra $300 for this appraisal, then we can definitely get it back in under 2 weeks, or not, and we're going to be at risk of closing. And you can also play with the time frame that you request that appraisal. So if you put a nice price out there for the appraisal, make it appealing for the appraiser to pick it up. Also, you don't have too strict of a timeline, meaning you're asking for it back in a week versus saying 2 weeks is going to do. So it's just kind of interesting how you can find that sweet spot to address the issue with the turn times.
Yeah, and I think you're really smart to do that, too, because there's a lot of talk nationally right now about how there's this big appraiser shortage, but the truth is that there's a lot of appraisal management companies, sort of the middleman or the in-between, and they're simply offering really, really low fees and unrealistic turn times. And so if appraisers are super busy and then these AMCs, blast out this order to 200 appraisers or more, and then the AMC says, "Hey, what's your best fee, or what's and when can you get it done?" Then they're really fishing for the lowest price possible, and then a lot of appraisers just delete that. It's garbage, and
exactly.
you think, why would I even bite on this? And so In contrast, if you have a lender reaching out who's built relationships with appraisers or who says, hey, look, we understand that you're busy and here's a normal fee for the market, but we want to pad it with, however much a rush fee should be, and here's a reasonable time, then you're going to find someone to do that. It's just like in my market right now, we have a labor shortage because when the housing bubble burst, all, skilled labor moved to Texas or moved back to Mexico and such. And so right now it's really hard to find a contractor. And so if I, blast 300 contractors with an email saying, hey, who's going to buy it at the lowest price, then, that's going to be a joke. I'm going to go to everyone's spam folder rather than find someone who's going to work and do quality work. And so it's an interesting place to be right now. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there about the appraiser shortage and such, but there are markets where they're struggling. We need more appraisers in the Pacific Northwest. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely hear that in our market. But like anything else, if you're not getting the results that you want, you got to play around with it and find that sweet spot. And I think I definitely did. So a call to action on the lending side is, ask what it's taking for those appraisers. There's appraisals. There's no reason you can't get an appraisal back in 2 weeks. For a $700,000 home, you might be looking at $895 for the appraisal. So, there's a call to action. Ryan, well, thank you so much for spending time with me. I appreciate you doing the Family Finance and Future online meetup earlier in the week, and then, tagging behind it with a different conversation here for my listeners on the Money Hour, and just really appreciate your wealth of information. And I love reading the information that you put out online, and that's why you're here. So again, if you're listening, I encourage for you to take a look and follow Ryan and the information that he puts out there as resources. So thank you, Ryan.
Oh, thanks so much, Tina. What a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we'll talk with you soon. This is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I look forward to talking more money, same place, same time, right here on 1150 AM KKNW.